I still remember the moment our scanners detected the signal buried beneath the asteroid's crust, a frequency older than our species, older than every star chart ever drawn. Its resonance was like a whisper from the void, an echo of a long-forgotten civilization. I should have turned back. I should have warned them. But instead, I touched it. Before I go on, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I want to know how far my story travels across the stars. The control room felt colder that day. My hands trembled as I navigated the interface, each keystroke connecting me deeper to that ancient presence. The image flickered, a fragment of an alien structure emerged, encased in rock and time. The surface shimmered with a light I had never seen, as if the stone itself was imbued with a pulse of energy. I could feel it, the magnetic pull of the unknown, a siren's call I wasn't ready to answer. The crew was gathering around, their faces illuminated by the pale glow of the screens. I could see the excitement building among them, a mix of hope and fear. Commander Voss, with his stern demeanor and unyielding focus, squinted at the data. "What are we dealing with, Dr. Hargrove?" he demanded, his voice taut with urgency. "A relic," I replied, trying to mask my own trepidation. "But it's more than that. It could be a beacon, perhaps a message, something significant." I could see the gears turning in his mind, weighing the risks against the potential discoveries that lay ahead. His gaze turned to the hovering hologram, and for a moment I could sense doubt creeping into him. But the allure of the unknown was intoxicating, and who could resist the possibility of rewriting our understanding of the universe? As we prepared to initiate the extraction, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was electric, filled with a tension that felt almost tangible. I could see the shadows of the past flickering in the corners of my mind, the lost civilizations that whispered through the cosmos, warning of the dangers that lie in discovering relics of their time. But those thoughts were drowned out by the exhilaration of scientific discovery. I was ready to uncover the truth, no matter what it cost. With a deep breath, we initiated the extraction sequence. The machinery hummed to life, sending vibrations through the floor beneath us. I could feel my heartbeat quicken as the layers of rock began to peel away, revealing the ancient artifact. It was a shard of something monumental, a fragment of a long-lost civilization. I couldn't help but think of the countless lives that had come before me, reaching for something they could never grasp. Was this their legacy? Had they left this behind as a beacon for the curious? As the last remnants of rock crumbled away, the structure revealed itself fully, an intricate design, shimmering with energy that flickered like stars in the night sky. I reached out, my fingers brushing against its surface, and in that instant, a shock wave surged through the control room, knocking us all back. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and whispers of panic erupted among the crew. I felt the energy course through me, igniting every nerve ending, and in that moment, I understood. I had awakened something far beyond our comprehension. Chaos erupted around me. The screens flashed with warnings of failure, systems collapsing as the ancient relic responded to our intrusion. The ship shuddered violently, like a beast disturbed from its slumber. I struggled to regain my footing, my mind racing with the implications of what we had just unleashed. It was not just an artifact, it was a force, a beacon that had lain dormant for eons, waiting for us to come and probe its secrets. "Get us out of here," Commander Voss shouted, urgency gripping his voice. "Now!" I scrambled to regain control of the systems, but the energy from the relic was interfering with our technology in ways I couldn't fully understand. The ship began to veer away from the asteroid, propelled by a force we could not see. I felt the cold grip of fear tightening around my chest, but there was no time for hesitation. I had consumed the ancient knowledge that lay dormant in my mind, and yet I was still the same human, fragile and vulnerable. In the chaos, I caught a glimpse of the view outside the viewport. The asteroid, once a dull rock, now glimmered ominously, surrounded by a swirling mass of energy that pulsated with a life of its own. I realized with horror that we weren't alone. Other vessels, attracted by the disturbance, began to converge upon us. They were not from our empire, nor did they bear any insignia I recognized. Their designs were alien, menacing, as if they were drawn to the same signal we had followed. "We have to signal for help," I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. But before we could react, a wave of energy surged from the relic, and I felt it wash over us like a storm. The other ships froze in their tracks, their systems failing as if they were caught in a cosmic web. I understood then what we had unleashed, a relic of immense power, capable of disrupting the very fabric of space around us. The silence that followed was deafening. The control room, once filled with the sound of alarms and shouts, was now eerily quiet. It was as if the universe held its breath, waiting for the aftermath of our recklessness. I looked around at the crew, their faces pale and drawn, the weight of reality crashing down upon us. We had awakened something ancient, and it was no longer merely a relic. It had become a catalyst for conflict. In that moment, I felt the full weight of my actions. This discovery, which should have been a beacon of hope, had spiraled into something dark and foreboding. As dread settled over me, I realized this was only the beginning. The echoes of our intrusion would ripple through the cosmos, and I could only wonder what consequences awaited us. As I stared out into the vastness of space, I made a silent promise to myself. I would uncover the truth behind this relic, no matter the cost. The universe had spoken, and I was determined to answer. I could only hope that I would not have to pay too steep a price. As the extraction team moved in, I could sense the weight of history pressing down on us. My heart raced, a desperate drumbeat in the silence. The room was filled with hurried whispers and the clattering of equipment, but all I could hear was the distant echo of the relic's power, resonating through the very fabric of the ship. Commander Voss stood beside me, his eyes locked onto the holographic display, and I wondered if he felt the same dread creeping into his thoughts. "Dr. Hargrove," he said, his voice low and firm, "what happens when we awaken it?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know, but we must proceed with caution. This isn't just an artifact. It's a message from a civilization we can't even comprehend." My words hung in the air, heavy with uncertainty. Moments passed, stretching into an eternity. A team of engineers worked feverishly, their faces shadowed in concentration. The extraction device hummed to life, extending its metallic arms toward the shimmering relic. Lights flickered, and the tension in the room escalated. I felt it in the pit of my stomach, an unease that told me something was terribly wrong. Then the device made contact. The moment the ancient stone was touched, a surge of energy erupted through the ship, thrumming with an intensity that rattled the very bones of the crew. The screens flickered violently, the lights in the control room dimming and brightening erratically. I staggered backward, grabbing hold of the console for support, my heart pounding as shadows danced along the walls. "Report," Voss shouted, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Before anyone could respond, a blinding beam of light shot from the relic, cutting through the darkness like a knife. The room was filled with a low, resonant hum that thrummed in my chest, vibrating through my very core. It felt alive. The energy swirled, coiling around us, and I could see colors that defied description, shapes twisting and turning in a cosmic ballet. And then, the ship shuddered violently, as if caught in the grip of a powerful force. Alarms blared, the piercing sound drowning out the echoes of the relic's call. I stumbled again, losing my footing as the entire control room tilted, and panic surged through the air like wildfire. "Stabilize the ship," Voss barked, his voice rising above the din. I could see fear etched on the faces of my fellow crew members. My mind raced as the implications of what was happening sank in. We had awakened something, something powerful. The vessel groaned in protest, the hull straining against unseen forces. Screens flashed warnings, red lights bleeding into the chaos, and I felt the ground beneath me tremble as if the very universe was in turmoil. Distant explosions echoed beyond the hull, and through the viewport I glimpsed a fleet of ships spiraling out of control. "Engage emergency protocols." The voice of Commander Voss cut through the panic like a blade. I watched in horror as more ships became caught in the storm of energy, their systems collapsing under the strain. "We're losing power," one of the engineers cried out, fingers flying across the console. "Life support is failing in sections 5 through 8. My heart sank. We were losing everything. The relic had become a catalyst for chaos, a signal that called forth a darkness we weren't prepared to face. As I tried to wrap my mind around the unfolding disaster, I felt a deep sense of despair wash over me. This was not how it was supposed to be. "Dr. Hargrove," Voss's voice broke through my thoughts, "I need you to stabilize the system. Find the source of this energy." With determination bubbling beneath my despair, I made my way to the main console. A flicker of hope ignited within me. I would find a way to understand the relic and its purpose. I had to. But in that moment of resolve, I knew deep down that awakening the relic had set into motion events beyond our control. The universe was shifting, and we were caught in its relentless tide. The war that loomed ahead would test every fiber of my being, a conflict that could change the very nature of existence itself. As I connected to the ship's systems, I understood that the battle was only just beginning. The relic's power beckoned me, its secrets waiting to be unveiled, and I felt the pull of destiny, a call that would either save us or shatter what remained of our fragile reality. I drifted through the silence of the ship, the hum of machinery a faint reminder of the chaos outside. The relic's awakening had sent ripples through our fleet, like a pebble dropped into a vast ocean. I had witnessed the first tremors of its power, a flicker of energy that disrupted our systems, leaving us vulnerable in the blackness of space. As I floated through the corridors, a familiar weight pressed down on my chest, a feeling that I had long since accepted as part of my existence. It was the gnawing sensation of regret. Isolation can be a cruel companion. I found myself retreating further into the bowels of the ship, away from the crew. They were buzzing with excitement, poring over data and making plans, while I was left to wrestle with my thoughts. What had I uncovered? What had I unleashed? The image of the relic haunted me, its shimmering surface reflecting the faces of my crew, their hopes and dreams mingling with my own growing dread. In the depths of the main reactor bay, I sat alone, surrounded by whirring machines that powered our ship. The pulsating lights cast shadows that danced like specters, and I wondered if this was what true loneliness felt like, an emptiness that echoed against the walls of my mind. The universe was vast, but in that moment, it felt suffocatingly small. I stared into the void beyond the ship's viewport, losing myself in the stars that twinkled like distant memories. Every flicker of light was a reminder of what lay beyond our understanding. The relic had awakened something deep within the cosmos, a force that rippled through the fabric of existence. I could sense the tension building around me, but I also felt a peculiar pull towards that ancient signal, as if it beckoned me to uncover its secrets. The deeper I delved into my thoughts, the more I began to question everything I had believed about our place in the universe. The crew buzzed with discussions, grappling with the implications of our find. I could hear snippets of conversations drifting down the hallways. Rumors of an impending conflict with the Zareth, an empire that had plagued our sector for centuries. They were ruthless, their thirst for power insatiable, and now, with the relic in our possession, they would not sit idly by. My heart raced at the thought of what was to come, yet the strange allure of the relic remained, a song I couldn't ignore. I found myself returning to the control room, a sense of inevitability drawing me back. The holographic display flickered, illuminating the faces of my crew, faces filled with determination, tinged with fear. Commander Voss was at the helm, his voice steady as he laid out our strategy. We will defend our position. Whatever the relic is, it must be protected. We are not just fighting for ourselves, but for all of humanity. His words echoed in my mind. Was that our purpose? Or were we mere pawns in a game we didn't fully understand? I felt the weight of their expectations bearing down on me. I was the one who had coaxed them into pursuing the relic, into unraveling its mysteries. What if it was a curse instead of a blessing? What if we had awakened a force that would ultimately lead to our destruction? As we prepared for the worst, I spiraled deeper into reflection. The memories of my past flooded my thoughts. My childhood, sitting in my father's workshop, surrounded by star charts and stories of adventurers who had dared to dream. I remembered the warmth of his enthusiasm, his belief that we were meant for something greater. Yet here I was, a reluctant participant in a battle that felt beyond my control. The shadows of doubt pooled in my chest, dark and heavy. I had wanted to be a beacon of hope, a guide through the unknown, but now I felt like a moth drawn to a flame, knowing that I might get burned. I silently cursed my own ambition. I had yearned for discovery, yet it was leading us towards destruction. With each passing hour, I felt the pressure mounting, my crew counting on me, the universe watching, waiting. Then came the first signs of conflict. A distant alarm wailed through the ship, piercing my reverie. I shot to my feet, adrenaline surging through my body. The ominous sound reverberated in my ears, a warning of the impending storm. Commander Voss's voice crackled over the intercom. All personnel to battle stations, we are under attack. I dashed to the control room, the chaos erupting around me. Crew members scrambled to their stations, screens flashing with red alerts. The Zareth fleet had arrived, a dark wave against the backdrop of stars. As I took my place beside Voss, the reality of our situation crashed over me like a tidal wave. The ship shuddered as the first shots rang out, the deep rumble of explosions rippling through the hull. My heart raced, the fear mingling with the remnants of my earlier introspection. I could feel the ancient relic's presence nearby, a silent observer to the chaos unfolding. Did it know? Did it foresee what would happen? I glanced at Voss, whose eyes were steely with resolve. "Activate the defensive systems," he commanded, his voice cutting through the cacophony. I moved quickly, fingers flying across the controls, desperate to protect my crew, desperate to protect ourselves from the impending doom. Outside, the vastness of space became a battlefield, illuminated by flashes of energy and the fiery trails of missiles. I could see the Zareth ships swarming like locusts, their intent clear. They wanted the relic, and they would stop at nothing to seize it. My mind raced. The relic had connected us to something greater, but it had also drawn the attention of a power we could hardly comprehend. As the battle raged on, I felt a creeping sense of helplessness, a realization that we were fighting against forces far beyond our control. I had craved discovery, but now faced the consequences of that desire. With each explosion, another layer of my resolve peeled away, leaving me vulnerable to the emotional tempest swirling inside me. "Hold steady," Voss shouted, his voice a lifeline amid the chaos. I looked into his eyes, the determination mirrored in the faces of our crew. We were unified in this moment, bound by a shared purpose, even as the shadows of uncertainty loomed larger. With each passing moment, I felt the weight of the relic beside me, a silent partner in our struggle. It was more than just an object. It was a catalyst, a harbinger of fate. I could sense its energy coursing through the ship, linking us to the greater mysteries of the universe. I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the rising tide of despair. We would fight. We would endure. And somehow we would uncover the truth behind the relic, even if it meant facing the unknown. The battle was just beginning, but I felt a flicker of hope amid the fear. As the alarms blared and the ship rocked beneath the onslaught, I promised myself that I would not falter. We had awakened something ancient, and now we would have to face the consequences. The echoes of the past were calling, and I felt the universe watching, waiting for us to make our next move. And then, the ship shuddered violently, as if caught in the throes of awakening from a long sleep. The walls trembled, and I felt the weight of ages pressing upon me as the blinding light surged forth, illuminating every corner of the room. My heart raced, a wild drumbeat against the tide of chaos that enveloped us. Commander Voss's shout faded into a distant memory. I could barely hear anything over the growing roar of energy cascading from the relic. Panic erupted among the crew. Faces that once held determination were now marred by confusion and fear. The engineers struggled to contain the overwhelming power surging through the ship, their hands flying over controls, desperately trying to stabilize our precarious situation. The holographic display flickered erratically, showing readings that spiraled into madness. I could barely make sense of it, but one thing was clear. We had crossed a boundary we were never meant to trespass. As I fought to regain my footing, the realization washed over me like cold water. We had awakened something, and it was responding. The power radiating from the relic felt sentient, as if it were alive and aware of every soul in the room. It was as if we had stumbled upon the heartbeat of a forgotten civilization, an urgent pulse of energy that now resonated with our very beings. "Get control of the systems," Voss barked, his voice finally breaking through the chaos. I saw him moving with purpose, trying to rally the crew amidst the storm of uncertainty. We need to stabilize the energy flow before it tears the ship apart. But the relic had other plans. With a pulse that seemed to echo across the very fabric of space and time, it released a shockwave that knocked me to the ground. I landed hard on the cold metal floor, pain shooting through my body, but it was nothing compared to the horror unfolding around me. I watched as the holographic display sputtered and sparked, the lights flickering ominously before plunging us into semi-darkness. The hum grew louder, a crescendo of fear that filled every crevice of my mind. Then, silence, an unsettling quiet that hung in the air, heavy and oppressive, as if the universe itself held its breath. I pushed myself up, shaking off the disorientation, and looked around. The crew was still, their eyes wide with disbelief. The relentless energy from the relic had subsided, but the aftermath of its awakening lingered like a ghostly whisper. "Status report," Voss shouted, urgency cutting through the tension. "Systems are compromised," an engineer replied, his voice shaky. "We've lost primary power, and I can't get a read on the external sensors. It's like something's interfering with our systems." I could feel the collective dread pooling in my stomach. My thoughts spiraled, and I realized that we had drawn the attention of something far greater than ourselves. The relic had stirred, and now it had awoken the echoes of an ancient conflict. As if in confirmation, the ship's alarms blared to life, a cacophony of sound that cut through the silence. "Incoming vessels!" another crew member yelled, his fingers dancing over the controls in a desperate attempt to regain control. "We're being surrounded!" My heart dropped. We were not just dealing with an ancient relic, we had become a target. I could picture the ships circling us in the void, their intentions looming dark and grim. With every second that passed, the weight of our mistake bore down heavier upon me. I felt helpless as the realization sunk in. This was no mere discovery. We had uncovered a beacon, a signal that reached across galaxies, beckoning power-hungry empires that lay in wait. "Brace for impact," Voss commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. The ship trembled again, this time with the approach of enemy fire. I grabbed onto the console, feeling the vibrations surge through my body. The crew moved with a frantic energy, adrenaline fueling their actions as they prepared for a battle I wasn't sure we could win. Weapons were primed, and I felt a shiver of fear crawl up my spine. We were outnumbered, caught in a web of our own making. I stole a glance at the relic, now quiet, a dormant power that had transformed into a harbinger of chaos. The weight of what we had unleashed pressed down on me, an unshakable burden that gnawed at the edges of my mind. "Brace for impact," Voss commanded, his voice steady despite the chaos. The ship trembled again, this time with the approach of enemy fire. I grabbed onto the console, feeling the vibrations surge through my body. The crew moved with a frantic energy, adrenaline fueling their actions as they prepared for a battle I wasn't sure we could win. Weapons were primed, and I felt a shiver of fear crawl up my spine. We were outnumbered, caught in a web of our own making. I stole a glance at the relic, now quiet, a dormant power that had transformed into a harbinger of chaos. The weight of what we had unleashed pressed down on me, an unshakable burden that gnawed at the edges of my mind. I felt the conflict within me, the desire to abandon the ship, to escape the impending doom, but I knew I couldn't. I had to face this moment, not just as a scientist, but as someone who had set foot into the abyss of cosmic history. Before I could gather my thoughts, the ship was rocked by a violent explosion. I was thrown back, the world spinning around me. The lights flickered and dimmed, and I could hear the frantic shouts of my crewmates as they scrambled to regain control. Panic surged through the air, thick and suffocating, and I struggled to comprehend the magnitude of our situation. "Return fire," Voss shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. "We need to protect the ship." With a surge of determination, I pulled myself back to my feet, gripping the console to steady myself. I caught sight of the view screen, where enemy vessels appeared like shadows against the stars, dark shapes of destruction that loomed closer with every heartbeat. I could see the weapons charging, the anticipation of annihilation crackling in the air. "Dr. Hargrove," Voss's voice cut through the chaos, pulling me from my daze. "I need you at the tactical station. We can't let them take the relic." The weight of his words struck me. We were fighting not just for our survival, but for the legacy of an ancient civilization that had entrusted us with its knowledge. I nodded, forcing my feet to move toward the tactical station. Each step pulsed with urgency, the ship trembling beneath my feet as if it shared in our dread. As I reached the station, I engaged the targeting systems, my fingers deftly navigating the interface. The screens flickered, displaying the enemy vessels. I could see the outlines of their ships. Their intent was clear. They had come for the power we had unwittingly unleashed. "Fire!" Voss commanded, and I felt the ship lurch as our weapons discharged. A surge of energy erupted from our cannons, and I watched as it streaked through the darkness, illuminating the void with a vivid light. The shot struck one of the enemy ships, and for a moment, I believed we might have a chance. But instead of retreating, the enemy press on, their numbers overwhelming. The ship shuddered again, alarms blaring as another wave of fire raked across the hull. I could see the damage reports flooding in, our defenses were failing, and the dread of defeat weighed heavily on my heart. "Divert all power to shields," I yelled, urgency fueling my voice. "We need to hold on." That as I looked at the screens, I could see the reality dawning on us. The ancient relic had awakened a force far beyond our understanding, and now we were the ones trapped in its shadow. The weight of failure hung thick in the air, and I realized the battle ahead would not just be a struggle for survival, but a desperate attempt to understand the forces that lay beyond the stars. The relic had spoken, and we were listening. What had we awakened? And would we ever truly comprehend the magnitude of our actions? Time twisted around us, and in that moment, I understood. We were standing at the brink, with the echoes of the past now reverberating through our very souls. I drifted through the silence of the ship, the hum of machinery a faint reminder of the chaos outside. The relic's awakening had sent ripples through our fleet, like a pebble dropped into a vast ocean. I had witnessed the first tremors of its power, a flicker of energy that disrupted our systems, leaving us vulnerable in the blackness of space. As I floated through the corridors, a familiar weight pressed down on my chest, a feeling that I had long since accepted as part of my existence. It was the gnawing sensation of regret. Isolation can be a cruel companion. I found myself retreating further into the bowels of the ship, away from the crew. They were buzzing with excitement, poring over data and making plans, while I was left to wrestle with my thoughts. What had I uncovered? What had I unleashed? The image of the relic haunted me, its shimmering surface reflecting the faces of my crew, their hopes and dreams mingling with my own growing dread. In the depths of the main reactor bay, I sat alone, surrounded by whirring machines that powered our ship. The pulsating lights cast shadows that danced like specters, and I wondered if this was what true loneliness felt like, an emptiness that echoed against the walls of my mind. The universe was vast, but in that moment, it felt suffocatingly small. I stared into the void beyond the ship's viewport, losing myself in the stars that twinkled like distant memories. Every flicker of light was a reminder of what lay beyond our understanding. The relic had awakened something deep within the cosmos, a force that rippled through the fabric of existence. I could sense the tension building around me, but I also felt a peculiar pull towards that ancient signal, as if it beckoned me to uncover its secrets. The deeper I delved into my thoughts, the more I began to question everything I had believed about our place in the universe. The crew buzzed with discussions, grappling with the implications of our find. I could hear snippets of conversation about the power we had awakened and the dangers it posed. They spoke of alliances we might forge and enemies we would face. But all I could think about was the weight of responsibility pressing down on my shoulders. They were looking to me for leadership, for direction, yet I felt unmoored, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. As I wandered the empty halls, the ship's walls seemed to pulse with the energy of the relic, vibrating with a life of their own. I could almost hear the whispers in the metal, echoes of an ancient language that teased the edges of my consciousness. What had this relic been? A weapon? A beacon? Or perhaps a prison for an intelligence that had long since outgrown its confines? Each possibility sent chills down my spine, igniting a deep-seated fear that I couldn't shake. Suddenly, the alarms blared, piercing through the silence like a knife. I jolted upright, adrenaline surging through my veins. The crew's voices turned to frantic shouts, the once calm hum of the ship now a cacophony of chaos. I rushed to the control room, my heart racing as I fought against the tide of panic that threatened to engulf me. "Status report," I barked as I entered the room, eyes scanning the frantic faces of my crew. "Captain, we're detecting anomalies," one of the techs shouted, her fingers flying over the consoles. "Energy readings are spiking. Something is coming through." The screen flickered to life, revealing a swirl of colors and shapes coalescing into something tangible, a fleet on the approach, their ships forming a menacing silhouette against the vastness of space. My stomach dropped. The remnants of an ancient empire, long thought lost, were upon us. How could they have known? Did they sense the relic's awakening as I had? "Reinforce shields," I commanded. "Prepare for engagement." We scrambled to our stations, my crew moving with a frantic urgency that mirrored my own racing thoughts. I couldn't help but wonder, what if this was the moment they had been waiting for? What if our discovery had been the catalyst for a war we were ill prepared to fight? I felt the weight of 1,000 decisions crashing down on me as I struggled to maintain an air of calm amidst the growing storm. I took my position at the command console, my heart hammering as I assessed the incoming threat. The fleet was unlike anything we had ever encountered. Their ships were adorned with symbols that seemed to pulse, alive with energy. It was as if they were crafted from the very fabric of the cosmos, and I realized with dawning horror that we were not the first to stumble upon the relic. Countless civilizations had undoubtedly tried to harness its power before us, and now we were on the precipice of a conflict that could engulf us all. The tension in the room was palpable, a thick fog of anxiety that choked the air. As the enemy ships drew closer, I felt the weight of my crew's expectations pressing down on me. They looked to me for reassurance, but all I could offer was a facade of confidence. Deep down, I was as frightened as they were. I had unleashed this chaos with my curiosity, and now I had to face the consequences. "Captain, they're hailing us," another crew member shouted, his voice strained. "On screen," I replied, my throat dry. The image of their commander flickered to life, a figure shrouded in shadows, their features obscured by a darkness that seemed inky and alive. I felt an instinctual shiver run through me. This was no mere enemy. It was a harbinger of a reality I had never imagined. "Humans," the voice was smooth yet carried an edge of disdain, "you have awakened what was meant to remain dormant. Do you not understand the gravity of your actions?" My mind raced. This was the voice of a power far older and far more dangerous than anything humanity had yet encountered. "We seek only to understand," I replied, though I realized how hollow those words felt. "Understanding comes at a cost," the figure warned. "You will pay for your trespass, and the relic is not yours to command." Before I could respond, a blinding light enveloped the control room. The ship trembled as if caught in the grip of a colossal force. I steadied myself, staring at the screen where the enemy fleet was now launching a wave of energy. The intensity of the moment surged around us, a tidal wave of impending doom crashing over our fragile hopes. "Brace for impact," I shouted, adrenaline coursing through me. The weight of the universe pressed down hard, squeezing my heart as I prepared to face the consequences of our discovery. We had awakened something ancient and powerful, and now the reckoning was upon us. I awoke to silence, a heavy and unsettling quiet that filled the void left by chaos. The blinding light had faded, but the memory of its brilliance lingered in my mind like a phantom glow. As I sat up, every part of me ached, a reminder of the battle I had fought against forces greater than myself. The ship was eerily calm now, its systems humming softly, as if they had finally surrendered to the relic's will. I could still feel its presence, pulsing just beneath the surface, a heartbeat that resonated throughout the metal frame of the vessel. "Is everyone all right?" I called out, my voice sounding frail and distant in the aftermath of the storm. Slowly, crew members began to stir, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. Commander Voss was among them, his expression grave as he surveyed the damage around us. The control room, once a hub of frenetic energy, was now a graveyard of flickering consoles and scattered tools. "Report," he said, his voice steady despite the tumult around us. A technician checked her readouts, her fingers trembling. "Systems are stabilized, but we're in a reduced power mode. The relic, it somehow integrated itself into our core." I rose to my feet, wincing as pain radiated from my side. The walls of the ship hummed in response to my movements, as if they recognized me, as if they had become sentient and were aware of my presence. "What does that mean?" I asked, my heart sinking at the implications. "It means," Voss said, his tone heavy with realization, "that this ship is no longer ours. It belongs to the relic now." A chill ran down my spine. We were at the mercy of an ancient power, one that we had unwittingly awakened. I had touched it, I had initiated this disaster, and now we were bound to its will. I thought of the crew, of the lives that depended on our choices, and the weight of my responsibility pressed down on me like the crushing gravity of a dying star. Suddenly, the ship shuddered again, Alarms blared and the lights flickered ominously. I stumbled as the floor tilted beneath me. "Brace yourselves," I shouted, grabbing onto a console for support. As the upheaval subsided, I caught sight of the holographic display flickering back to life. It showed a map of the surrounding space, but the coordinates were foreign, unreadable. "It's showing us something," a crew member murmured, eyes wide with awe and terror. "A destination?" "Or a warning," I added, staring at the swirling nebulae and distant star systems that filled the screen. I could feel the relic's energy drawing this in, a magnetic pull that pulsed through the core of our ship. We were no longer merely explorers. We had become vessels for an ancient force that transcended our understanding. "Commander, we need to make a decision," I said, urgency creeping into my voice. "We can't stay here. We have to follow the relic, or we risk losing everything." Voss nodded, his jaw set with determination. "We'll plot a course based on the readings. If the relic is leading us somewhere, then we must uncover its purpose. Prepare for a jump." As the crew scrambled to execute his orders, I felt a strange sense of purpose washing over me. The fear that had gripped me moments ago began to fade, replaced by a profound curiosity. What secrets lay ahead? What truths awaited us in the depths of the cosmos? The ship surged forward, propelled by the relic's unyielding energy. As we jumped into hyperspace, the familiar stars blurred into streaks of light, and I found myself holding my breath, caught between hope and dread. We were venturing into the unknown, and with each passing moment, the weight of our fate pressed down upon us. In the void, I allowed my mind to wander, reflecting on the relic's significance. It was more than just an object. It was a remnant of a civilization that had long since vanished, a connection to the past that held the key to our future. But what had happened to those who had once wielded such power? Had they fallen into oblivion, consumed by their own ambition? Before I could delve deeper, the ship jolted violently, snapping me back to reality. The displays flickered, and alarms rang out once more. "What's happening?" I shouted, heart racing. "We're entering an area of instability," Voss replied, his voice strained as he wrestled with the controls. "Energy surges are off the charts. We need to recalibrate immediately." My heart sank as I realized the truth. The relic was not just a guide. It was a catalyst for conflict. Its awakening had sent ripples across the galaxy, drawing attention from forces that would seek to control it. I could feel it, the tension building, the storm on the horizon. "Enemies are approaching," a technician warned, eyes wide with terror. "They're responding to the energy signature." "Prepare for battle," Voss commanded, his voice a rallying cry that cut through the tension. "We will not back down." As the crew hastened to their stations, I felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through me. We were united now, bound together by our shared resolve. We would not let the relic fall into the wrong hands. We would defend it, not just for ourselves, but for the legacy it represented. In the moments that followed, we braced ourselves for the oncoming storm. The ship trembled as enemies closed in, their weapons primed and ready. I could see the darkness approaching, ships silhouetted against the backdrop of distant stars, and I knew this was it, the moment that would define us. The first shots rang out, tearing through the silence of space. I steadied myself, focusing on the controls. We were armed, but it was the relic's power that pulsed through our systems, its energy intertwining with our own. We can harness it, I realized, my mind racing. We can use it to counter their attack. "Activate the relic's defense protocols," Voss shouted. "We'll need every advantage we can get." I reached out, connecting with the ship's systems, feeling the pulse of the relic resonating with my very being. The energy surged, responding to my intent, and I directed it outward, creating a protective barrier around us. It was a shield forged from the echoes of a civilization long gone, a testament to their wisdom and strength. The enemy fire met our barrier, and I could feel the force reverberating through the ship. But we held firm. The relic was with us, guiding us, empowering us. Keep pushing, Voss urged. We can turn the tide. I felt the energy building, a crescendo of power that resonated through every fiber of my being. I closed my eyes, surrendering to the relic's will. It was more than just an object. It was a legacy, a hope, a bridge to the stars that connected us all. As I opened my eyes, a brilliant light erupted from our ship, illuminating the darkness, dispelling the shadows. The enemy's ships faltered, their formations breaking apart as they struggled against our newfound strength. In that moment, we became more than just a crew. We became guardians of a truth that had been hidden for far too long. One by one, the enemy ships began to retreat, and I could hardly believe it. We had turned the tide. We had claimed our victory, not through malice, but through understanding. The relic had awakened something within us, a unity that transcended the conflicts of the past. As the last ship vanished into the void, I collapsed back against the console, breathless. "We did it," I whispered, the weight of my emotions mingling with disbelief. "We actually did it." But even as the adrenaline faded, I knew our journey was far from over. The relic had revealed itself, but the true depth of its purpose remained a mystery. I looked at Voss, and in that moment, we understood. This was just the beginning, a new path forged in the light of an ancient truth. Silence fell over the ship, but it was a different kind of silence, one filled with possibility. The relic thrummed gently, a reminder of the legacy we carried and the responsibility it entailed. We were no longer just explorers. We were the stewards of a cosmic truth. As we set our course for home, I took a moment to breathe, to reflect on what we had experienced. The universe was vast, a tapestry of mysteries waiting to be unraveled, and now we held a piece of that tapestry in our hands, a relic that had the power to reshape our understanding of existence itself. I closed my eyes and let the stars fill my vision, understanding that each twinkling point of light represented a story, a world, a possibility. We had faced darkness and emerged stronger, united by a purpose greater than ourselves. In the end, the relic was not just an object of power, but a beacon, a reminder of our shared humanity and the bonds that tie us to the cosmos. And so, as we journeyed through the void, I whispered into the silence, "Together, we will uncover the truth."